In 2013, there was a song that was almost impossible to escape. It played on the radio, in commercials, at NBA games, at parties, and completely dominated the internet. Its name, Thrift Shop. Thanks to this hit, Macklemore went from being an independent rapper from Seattle to becoming one of the biggest stars in the music world. But what should have been the best thing to happen in his career ended up turning into a trap he was never able to escape from. Macklemore's story is one of the most complicated stories in modern rap, and man, of course, one day I was going to bring it to this channel. But before I tell you about it, hey, Action Crew in the house, check it out. If you're not subscribed to this channel yet, man, look now, subscribe, leave a like, and turn on notifications. You know the drill, right? The link to the t-shirt store will also be in the description, as well as some products related or not to Macklemore, so you can help the channel out a little too. So let's get started, because today we've got a lot of stories to tell. Benjamin Hammond Hager was born in 1983 in Seattle, Washington in the United States. He discovered hip-hop really early, right? At 6 years old, listening to Digital Underground. By 15, he was already writing his own lyrics. And of course, his main influences weren't the mainstream hip-hop or rap artists. They were people more from the alternative underground scene, and mainly coming from the East Coast of the United States. So we can mention as examples Wu-Tang Clan, Mobb Deep, and so on. Macklemore's stage name came about when he was still a child, while he was working on a school project. For an art project, he had to come up with a superhero name. So he created Professor Macklemore. Around the same time at the high school he attended, Garfield High School. He created his first project there, directly connected to rap. It was called Elevated Element. Under that name, he released his first project back in the year 2000. He even moved from Seattle to New Mexico, and he said he studied at a school called Santa Fe. It was this school that was responsible for him becoming good at rap. Years later, he goes back to Seattle and enrolls in a college that's a bit focused on the arts. That's the Evergreen State College. A university where people like Matt Groening, the guy who created The Simpsons, studied. Craig Bartlett, the creator of the cartoon Hey Arnold, also studied there. And Gerson Saldanha, the creator of the Gerson Saldanha channel. Yes, guys, you heard that right. I studied at the same university that Macklemore studied at. But years later, I did an exchange program there at the Evergreen State College, which I love with all my heart. But that's a topic for another video. There, Macklemore used music for social impact. He worked on a social project called Gator Gateways, giving music workshops to young people in detention. Keep this information in mind about Michael Macklemore always working on social projects, because that's really important throughout this video. After graduating from college, releasing a little project here, another one there, Michael Macklemore felt that his career as a rapper was kind of stagnant. Man, the guy had the skills, he had talent, he even had a really good creative vision, but man, he was missing a visual identity and a production that would really impact the audience. That's when, through MySpace, Macklemore meets a young man who was only 17 years old named Ryan Lewis. Ryan wasn't a renowned producer in the industry. He was just a kid passionate about music. He played guitar, but he mainly made a living as a photographer and graphic designer at the beginning of the partnership. At first, Ryan was just the guy who was hired to take the photos and most of the graphic art for Macklemore's albums. But as time went by, their friendship grew stronger. They became great friends. But there was an obstacle that could get in the way of what those two were creating back then. It was Macklemore's addiction to alcohol and drugs. Things got so serious that at the insistence of Macklemore's father around 2008 or so, he had to check into a rehab clinic. He stayed there for 35 days, and when he came out, he was completely clean and already rehabilitated. Man, Ryan had produced a bunch of really awesome rap and hip-hop beats. He showed them to Macklemore and said, "Bro, let's take the next step in our career." And in 2009, the two of them officially became a duo, Macklemore and Ryan Lewis. But you guys know a lot of the stories I tell here on this channel, and there's always something in common, right? That when rappers already feel confident, they go knock on record label doors. In the case of Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, they chose a different path. They decided to go independent in music. In other words, let's release our stuff independently. So they turned down contracts with major record labels and decided to create their own business model. Using the internet, word of mouth, and the impeccable visual style that Ryan mastered. So my man, they were about to shake up the American music industry. Their music showed a bizarre versatility. One moment they were releasing tracks with deep lyrics about Macklemore's addiction, like the song Other Side.
It won't be us. It won't be us.
And at other times, they were releasing party songs so people could dance at parties. In short, they alternated between socially conscious songs and party tracks. But in 2011, they ended up creating a song that would help the two of them break out of the bubble of local Seattle artists, so to speak, into guys who were doing something completely innovative and were really going to shake up the American scene with the song Can't Hold Us. I'm sure you might not recognize it just by the name, but this song here, you've definitely heard it somewhere before. Like the ceiling can't hold us.
Oh, so we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us.
Man, if you were on the internet between 2011 and 2013, it was impossible to escape Macklemore and Ryan Lewis. Even that voice from Ray Dalton singing Can't Hold Us became kind of immortalized because I think there was a commercial, if I'm not mistaken, for something that played this song all the time too. Anyway, those guys were already jumping from the internet to the real world, which was still something rare at that time. Ryan Lewis's production sounded like a mix between a war march and church piano, and the way Macklemore rapped at a speed that was just insane. The music video they shot independently. Over several months and countries, their visually spectacular journey went viral on old YouTube, making many people aware of them from then on. Because that song was also played all the time at NBA games, and then man, the people who followed rap back then, including me, started to look at the Seattle scene differently, but what nobody expected is that the duo's next step wouldn't be another epic song about overcoming obstacles. It would be an extremely fun, laid back, and cheap track about buying clothes at a thrift store. That was the start of the juggernaut called I'm Gonna Pop Some Tags, only got $20 in thrift shops. So, that's stacky.
I'm gonna pop some tags, only got $20 in my pocket.
It was August 2012 and Macklemore and Ryan Lewis just uploaded it to YouTube, right? The music video for Thrift Shop, which featured Wenz, who is actually an independent singer and is well known in the Seattle scene. The music video had a budget of only $5,000, and they really did film the video in thrift shops around the city. Macklemore went against the grain, saying it was cool, buying 99-cent clothes at thrift shops, and what happened next went down in the history books. That saxophone got stuck in everyone's head, and thrift shops started to become popular on YouTube. It started playing on the radio, and it kept catching on with people until it reached the Billboard Hot 100. You probably already know the result. It hit #1 on the main singles chart in the United States in January 2013, just so you understand the size of the historic achievement that the two of them accomplished at that time with this song. Yeah, we're talking about something that hadn't happened in 20 years, man. No completely independent artist had reached #1 on the Hot 100, man. That was a huge achievement because they really didn't have any record label investment. They had no promotion on American TV. Nothing really. But to make a music video with $5,000, they must have had something going on. Shortly after, the album The Heist was released, and it debuted directly at #2 on the Billboard 200, selling more than 78,000 copies just in the first week. And to ride the wave of this success, the song Can't Hold Us had been released well before Thrift Shop. It also hit #1 on the Hot 100. That's why many people think Can't Hold Us was the second single. It actually became a hit after Thrift Shop, though it was released earlier. So man, Macklemore was no longer just some alternative act out of Seattle. He simply became a global superstar. The guy was showing up everywhere, man. It was TV shows, talk shows. He was performing on every corner. The problem is, without realizing it, Macklemore had just created a prison for himself. The mainstream world started to see him as the funny guy who sang about thrift shops. And the bigger Thrift Shop got, the harder it became to convince the public that Macklemore as a rapper was something bigger than just that song. Then, on the same album, the duo released the song Same Love, which was an anthem in support of same-sex marriage. Even if I Try. The song was a hit in pop culture. It was played endlessly. But it opened a very heavy Pandora's box about race, privilege, and cultural appropriation. But the real truth, guys, is that at that time, Macklemore started to be embraced by people who didn't like traditional rap or who traditional rap had never managed to reach. But still, it wasn't because traditional rap didn't want to reach these people. The things people said about Macklemore were like, man, I don't like rap, but Macklemore's rap, I like it. I don't know why. Others would say, wow, I like Macklemore's rap because his rap has a message. And let's be honest, for those who grew up listening to Wu-Tang Clan, Nas, and so on, that was almost an insult. That's because any rapper, man, he always has a message in his songs, but why on earth did people choose to listen to the message that Macklemore was bringing? And it wasn't ignoring the fact that other rappers from the past also brought messages. So guys, rap started to look at Macklemore with a certain suspicion. He didn't have the validation that Eminem got from Dr. Dre. For part of the black community, Macklemore seemed like the new Vanilla Ice. In other words, a sanitized white artist that white America decided to crown as the new king of rap. While some others who also had a lot to say were emerging in that scene. For example, Kendrick Lamar. Well, K-Dot, even though he had some prominence at that time, was still considered an underground guy there. But the craziest thing, man, is that Macklemore started to become aware of this kind of thing. He began to show almost a paralyzing guilt because he was entering a scene that was originally black. And in interviews, he tried to apologize for his privilege every 5 minutes, which really divided opinions. For some people, both white and black, he was being pretty clear-headed in recognizing that, but for some people too, both white and black, it sounded like a white savior complex. Man, and to make things worse for Macklemore at his peak, there was a controversy that got a lot of attention and it really affected his activist side. At a secret show in Seattle, Macklemore decided to go on stage in disguise, trying to walk among the crowd without being recognized. The choice of costume, a black wig, a long fake beard, and a huge plastic nose. The photos went viral, and he was accused of anti-Semitism. Then critics and celebrities like the actor Seth Rogen pointed out that the look was an offensive caricature of a Jewish person. And then Macklemore came forward to apologize, saying that he just grabbed the clothes from the dressing room without thinking about any stereotypes. But even so, the damage was already done. However, 2012 and 2013 were great years for Macklemore commercially speaking. He was even nominated for the Grammy for Best Rap Album at the 2014 Grammy Awards. And that's where it begins. The biggest dilemma in rap history. January 26, 2014, Staples Center in Los Angeles. The night of the Grammy for Best Rap Album arrives, and also one of the biggest ideological wars in the genre. At least that's what I remember experiencing. On one side, competing completely independently, commercial and very pop. There was The Heist by Macklemore. On the other side, backed by rap giants, was a masterpiece of the genre, which was Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar. In the middle of all this, other established legends in the genre were in the mix too as outside contenders. They were also in the mix for this award. Man, in other years they definitely would have won. There was Kanye West with his experimental and acclaimed album Yeezus, Drake with his influential Nothing Was the Same, and Jay-Z with Magna Carta Holy Grail. Man, I remember the hip-hop community was completely buzzing. Everyone wanted to know who was going to win. Like, Kendrick Lamar was the favorite that night. And if he actually won, man, he would have already become huge back then, you know? And on top of that, the street culture of Compton that he portrays so faithfully on the album would be validated for the whole world. But if Macklemore, who was already the underdog among the nominees, won, he would be considered actually not him, right? But the Recording Academy would be taken even less seriously than it already was. Because back then, they didn't care about anything. They gave awards to whatever mainstream stuff they knew that the public liked, regardless of the impact that could have on rap. But then the worst happened. The envelope opens and the announcement echoes. Macklemore and Ryan Lewis win the award for Best Rap Album. And it didn't stop there, man. They took home several other categories. For example, Best New Artist, beating Ed Sheeran, who is huge in pop music today, and Casey Musgraves, who is damn huge in country music now. And with Thrift Shop, they won the category for Best Rap Performance, beating Swimming Pools by Kendrick Lamar, and Started From the Bottom by Drake. And to top it all off, Thrift Shop won Best Rap Song that year, beating Holy Grail by Jay-Z with Justin Timberlake, and Fucking Problems by ASAP Rocky. I don't even need to say anything else to you guys, right? Man, the internet broke. The virtual booing happened in real time, but what really buried Michael Macklemore's career wasn't the award itself, but it was what he did after the award. Consumed by that paralyzing guilt we already talked about, Michael Macklemore felt like he also needed to apologize for it. Then he grabbed his phone and sent a text message straight to Kendrick Lamar, and the message says this, quote, "Kaio, you were robbed. I wanted you to win. It's bizarre that I stole it from you. I wanted to say that during my speech. But then the closing music started playing, and I froze. End quote. Kayo. Man, if he had kept that message private just between him and K. Dot, it would have been a gesture of respect. And very noble actually, but to make things worse, Michael Macklemore decided to share a screenshot of that text message on Instagram, like it was something everyone was supposed to see and applaud. Ended up backfiring. Instead of seeming humble, the hip-hop community and even the pop community too saw that as one of the most fake, performative, and condescending things in the world. Drake, man, who was also competing in the category, he went public to, ironically, defend Kendrick Lamar in this situation. He said something like, man, what Macklemore did was really lame. If he really wanted Kendrick to win the award, he should have given the award to Kendrick Lamar himself. He could have been the host and handed the award to K. Dot, not do what he did just to look like a good guy. Yeah, guys, Macklemore sabotaged himself for the whole world to see. I mean, to enjoy. And after this episode, the commercial impact for Macklemore and also mentally was devastating. The rapper was cancelled by the hip-hop community and looked at with suspicion by the media. The partnership with Ryan Lewis still resulted in another album in 2016, which was This Is Unruly Mass I've Made, but the shine was already gone. In this album, Macklemore tries to regain his prestige and respect, releasing a song that was almost 9 minutes long titled White Privilege 2. In other words, White Privilege 2. In this track, he discussed structural racism and his own role within the music industry. But the reception to this song was cold, and for many people, it sounded more like a long-winded rant from a leftist straight guy, man, just someone talking on the internet, rather than a real apology.
The only hip-hop that I let my kids listen to, cause you get it, all that negative stuff, it isn't.
But looking at it objectively, I really believe that the audience at that time didn't want to hear Macklemore being aware of his privilege. They wanted to hear funny songs or songs about thrift shops. So the scene, the critics, serious hip-hop part of the audience basically started to ignore what Macklemore was releasing. In 2017, the duo with Ryan Lewis ended in a respectful and friendly way. From then on, Macklemore decided to pursue a completely solo career. One of those solo projects that Macklemore released was the album Gemini. The critics ignored it, but I loved this album, mainly because it had an absolute banger, which was the song Glorious, his collab with Scarlet Grey. Man, hands down, this is one of Macklemore's best songs for me. And if the public had listened more closely, man, it would have been a hit back then. My God. So after all that turmoil, Macklemore hit the road on the joint tour, The Adventures of Cash and Macklemore. Man, ironically or not, this tour was a huge success. And it even helped establish Macklemore as a beast on stage, far from all the controversy he had with rap. Especially because he decided to embrace the pop side just a little, and I think that strategy was really good. On the personal side, he got his life and sobriety completely back on track. He's married to actress Trisha Davis, who he was already dating even before the success, and today he's a great dad to 3 kids. And he always shares this dad routine on social media in a very lighthearted way. In 2023, he released his 3rd album, named simply after his first name, Ben. The album was highly praised for its maturity and featured very honest tracks about his past relapses and his mental health journey. In recent years, he started using his voice in a very active political way again. In 2024, he released the protest track Hits Hall, donating all the profits to Palestinian refugees, which brought Macklemore's name back strongly into social and cultural debates in protest yields. Man, today, more than 10 years after Thrift Shop was released and all that controversy, we can come to some conclusions about the curse this song brought upon the artist, right? It's just that Thrift Shop, it simply turned Macklemore into a novelty act, basically a gimmick act. Man, a fad, you know? And that's largely because in the history of entertainment, when you show up in a very comedic, funny, or laid-back way, the audience kind of creates an invisible barrier. And then, man, it takes time and a lot of work for people to take you seriously when you want to discuss real problems that aren't entertaining and don't make anyone laugh. And that's not even mentioning the part of the audience that won't care when you talk about your pain, your addictions, and your political stance. And the irony is that Macklemore spent years trying to prove to the public that he was so much more than Thrift Shop. But the more he tried to explain himself, the more people remembered that song. In the end, Michael Macklemore's story shows us that mainstream success can be the most enduring trap. Thrift Shop put him on top of the world in a brilliant and independent way, but hip-hop can make you pay dearly when it feels like its culture has been completely ignored. And the price of that 9 99-cent coat ended up being too high and costing rapper Macklemore his legacy, but that's just my opinion. I want to know what you think, guys. Leave your comments below. Did you know this story? If yes, if not, comment anyway. We're in this together, everyone. Anyway, I'll stop here. Big hug from Gerson. See you in our next video, and thanks.